So for me it's page 228 and you have the little sequence. So you have these pictures, I believe. So what you're going to put underneath them, we've just said. So I'm having a bad day with technology. Stop. Okay, so you have these pictures. So underneath, this is our zygote. It's going to go via mitosis and we now get 2 cells. It's going to go to mitosis again and you get the idea. We go to 4 cells and we do it again and we get 8 cells. So mitosis. And it is usually at this point that implantation happens. So that like takes 5 days for one cell to become 2, etc. Okay. So you have your next picture, which has loads and loads and loads of cells in there. So when you get to this solid clump of cells, they call it, but it has a name. It's called a morula, M-O-R-U-L-A. And then you have a picture that kind of looks like this, where you have an outside and you seem to have loads of little cells over here, but the rest of it looks like it's kind of hollow, so there's cells around the outside, but there's actually looks like there's nothing in the middle, or it looks a bit liquidy. So this is what's called a hollow ball of cells, and it's called a blastocyst. So in this little diagram, this is going to be your embryo and everything else is going to become placenta and amnion. Okay.
Miss, can you move your little recording bar thing?
I think so. Hold on. Let me go. And I just have to move it off this. So let's put it here and put it here. Okay. Jess is the only person that is missing. I think we have everyone else. Check it later, but I think it's just Jess. Okay, so in terms of this little diagram, so I think I'm working off Peter. Laura looks like she's done. And Hannah has her head down, but I don't know if she's frozen. Nope, Hannah's alive. Phew. So you can label your little diagram that you have of this. Okay. So this is the blastocyst, and the outer layer, this part here, is called the trophoblast. And that will develop into your placenta and your amnion. So into your chorion and your amnion that we did the last day. And it's these cells here will become your embryo. So the inner cells will become the embryo, and those cells will keep dividing, and eventually you will get different types of tissues. So while they are in the blastocyst, they are what are called stem cells. They're undifferentiated. They can potentially become anything. They haven't decided what they're going to become yet. So they could become heart cells, hair cells, liver cells, enzymes, or genes for enzymes. It hasn't been decided.
Miss,
Yeah.
in the thing you have inner cells in the blastocyst eventually become...
The embryo.
Okay, so the embryo. So I got the format was weird.
Yeah, and the cells divide to give rise to the different tissue types.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the morula or the blastocyst is pushed along your fallopian tubes until it enters the uterus. So this, I had in my head that the 8-cell stage was the implantation, so maybe I'm incorrect on that. So this is implantation, so I apologize for that. I must be wrong. So over the 8 cells where it says implantation, strike that out. I had in my head it was 8-cell stage. Maybe I have that in my head because that's one of the viability points in IVF. I just know from talking with my sister-in-law that she had mentioned those. Okay, so we just have morula is the solid ball of cells. The blastocyst is half hollow, and you've got your part for your embryo in there. So in this little section we're just talking about the tissues now. What are the things that the tissues become? Now you don't have to reproduce this diagram, but it's in there to help you. So the inner cells in that blastocyst, they form what is called the embryonic disc, and in that embryonic disc there are layers, and the layers are called germ layers. And these layers will become different parts, different systems essentially. Oh lads. Okay, so the outer layer is called the ectoderm. It becomes your skin and your nervous system. You have 2 mesoderms layers, and they'll become your muscles and your skeleton. So ecto kind of is outside, so in my head I remember skin. Meso, M for meso and M for muscles. Helps me to remember those. You have an endoderm, which is inside, so this is going to become the inside of your your digestive system. And you have a coelom, which will become your heart and your lungs. So usually the questions that they'll ask you is, what are the names of the germ layers and what do they become?
Your skin and your nervous system are formed from the same group of cells?
In the same layer of cells in that solid part of your blastocyst.
Okay.
So these cells will, like the ectoderm, will give rise to the skin and your nervous system. There's other things that are in there. We're just taking a few parts of it. The mesoderm will do your muscles and your skeleton, and your endoderm is the inside of your digestive system. So remember, you have a layer of epithelial cells that go all the way from your mouth to your butt, all the way along the tube in your stomach, small intestine, large intestine. So endo for inner. We might get done today. So 2 and 2 in your book are both mesoderm. I don't know, have I given you the numbers down the side? Because in mine I have 1, 2, 3, 2. Okay.
Is the celium, how I pronounce it?
Say it again.
So the celium thing, whatever,
Yeah.
coelum.
Coelum. Yeah, whatever, however. Yeah.
So that one produces the cardiac muscles, the muscles that don't tire.
It's not muscles. It is literally will form your heart structures and your lung structures. So it's kind of in charge of your thoracic region.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry now, but for what becomes washed in the blastocyst, I think I got a bit confused with that.
So
it's okay. I can get someone to send a picture either. Just with the blanks.
So you can see this screen, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is essentially what you have. This lumpy part over here will become the embryo eventually. And this part here is called your trophoblast, and that's going to become your chorion and your amnion. Trophoblast. Does that answer that question?
I can't see that. I think it's frozen on the embryonic.
Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I know I've been trying to get into it for the past 10 minutes, but I finally got in there. So I couldn't get into HE, or not HE.
Jess, we can hear you.
No, I've been trying to get into it for the past 10 minutes. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I was having Wi-Fi problems yesterday.
Okay, you're here, better late than never. And now what we're talking about with those germ layers is this part here. So all of the cells in here will start to differentiate. They'll start to become the tissues that they're meant to become. Does that answer your question, Hannah?
Well, kind of. I missed the words for all different blanks. I got kind of confused.
Okay, but
I can get them to send one to me though. So.
Okay, I'm not sure what you're asking. So
for what becomes what is in the blastocyst, so the outer layer cells form the blank.
Forms the trophoblast, and it becomes your chorion, your amnion, and your placenta. And the inner cells will become the embryo, and they will give rise to the different types of tissues, which is what we've just done in the germ layers.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay. So in terms of then our amnion, You have it. So I've given you most of the blurb for this. So the only things that I haven't given you. So when the amnion is first formed, it is in contact with your embryo. So it literally is a coating on the embryo. But by the 4th or 5th week, the fluid is beginning to be made now. So suddenly your little embryo is now in this bag of liquid. And its primary function is protection. And I've given you the rest of the blurb. In reality, the most important part of all of the rest of it, so you have it here, it's just telling you 4 to 5 weeks you're getting your heart forms, brain's developing, you'll see the little buds for limbs. At 6 weeks you can see the little dark eyes, there'll be mouth, nose, ears. The cartilage is now becoming bone in terms of its development. And here is just the useless piece of information. So this is the reason why males of the species have nipples, because the Y chromosome hasn't been activated yet, but the nipples get made first. So there you go. I found out the other day that male dogs have nipples. I don't know why I did not know that, but found that out the other day. Should have known that. Okay, so by the 8th week you can determine sex. If you have a really good scanner, you can do sex. But the most important part of the 8th week is this difference. Your embryo is now what's called a fetus. So there's just a change in the description. So we started with the zygote. We went.
You have a little alien baby.
Well, you have a little miniature person. But it's now called fetus. So we started with the zygote. We went to our morula. We went to our blastocyst. We're now an embryo, and now finally we're a fetus. So that's at 8 weeks. So that just gets a highlight. And then by 12 weeks, when they go for scans, you can see arms and leg moving. They will urinate. I'm not 100% sure they'll actually defecate that early into the amniotic fluid, because technically your umbilical cord is getting rid of most of the waste for them. But yes, okay, so, and you can tell gender at 12 weeks if you've really good scans. So there's just this word, gestation, and that is just the length of time from fertilization to birth, and it lasts 38 weeks. But in reality it is taken as 40 weeks from day 1 of the last period, because technically you're pregnant after day 14. So that's where these extra, so for 2 weeks you're technically not pregnant.
We continue to gestate outside of the womb.
Say it again.
Like, because our brains are so big, we evolved to go into labor sooner, so that when the skull is still supple, it can actually get out of the womb. So that's why human babies compared to other animals are so useless when they're born, because they're still gestating technically.
Well, they're not gestating. They're just they're not mature.
Developing.
Yeah, they're not mature. But gestation is you're connected via an umbilical cord, and ideally that should be 9 months. So we've gone our 9 months. We're now getting ready for birth. Zara, stop talking to Clara. You can tell when you type, ladies. You can tell when you type. Or is it Hannah? It's one of the two of you anyway. You can see. I think it's Clara because she's
calling you all out.
You sit more upright, you see, when you type, as opposed to when you write, you all go over. So stop talking. Okay, so just in terms of then our prior to birth. So the estrogen and progesterone are produced all the way through pregnancy. Can anyone tell me, post-ovulation, what is the name of the thing in the ovary that actually makes the progesterone? Can we remember? So Graafian follicle becomes what after ovulation? Lads. Okay, so it's this thing, the corpus luteum. So that's in the ovary and that's produced for 3 months, and then after that your placenta will kick in. So just before birth, your placenta will stop making progesterone, and then the uterus will start to contract. And there's one other hormone that's going to be involved. It's called oxytocin. And that makes your uterus contract even more. So now you're going to be in labor. So if you are going in to be induced, they can give you it's a kind of like a pessary, so it literally is like this soft pill that they put into the vagina in the hope that that will bring on contractions. It's a thing called prostaglandin. But if you need to get a drip, it will be the oxytocin they would give to you. Or if your labor was going to slow down, you stop contracting. Obviously you can see his little respiration is getting heavier. He's going to breathe more. Fortunately, women don't change colour, which is good. Okay, and fortunately for seahorses, their labour doesn't last very long, but he's starting to get his contractions. You can see essentially here, this is the equivalent of his cervix dilating. And then loads of pushes and babies are born.
Seahorses are the only species where males actually do the birth part, right?
I think so.
Like the woman produces the eggs, but then the male is the one who gets the implantation.
Yep. Sharing is caring.
What about snails? I thought I heard snails have or maybe it's just they don't need.
I don't know. I'm not a snail expert, Anna.
Some mollusks can produce asexually, so they don't actually require another male or a female. They can actually they can actually produce eggs, and then if some species, at least to my knowledge, they can change their hormones to produce the other needed materials.
No,
they can change, like they have the eggs already, and they can change to become male to implant them. So they don't always need a second partner.
Okay, that's like asexual.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're going to change again.
I think only mollusks do that, though.
We're going to go this one. So I can.
During childbirth, the baby lies in the mother's uterus with his head pointing down towards the cervix. The first stages of labor begin with short, regular contractions of the uterus every few minutes, which continue until the mother's cervix is fully dilated. In the second stage of labor, the contractions become more forceful, more frequent, and more painful. As the baby's head starts to move down the vagina, the amniotic sac breaks and fluid is released. The top of the head appears at the entrance of the vagina and finally bulges out. This is the crowning of the head. The contractions which follow push the baby even farther down so that the head is delivered. The baby's eyes immediately begin to blink and the mouth makes sucking movements. The baby usually emerges facing the mother's back so that the head passes through the widest possible opening in the pelvic girdle. The head then turns so that the upper and then the lower shoulder follows. There is a final contraction and the baby slips out, still attached to the umbilical cord.
When you have to describe, I need to see this, but I can't see it here. When you have to describe the stages of labor for the SEC, we do it in terms of the 3 stages. So this is essentially showing you this what 10 centimeters dilated looks like. So orange watermelon is roughly 10 centimeters. My husband used to be terrible when our friends started having kids. He used to give them fruit baskets and also the Dairy Lee triangles, you know, that you get in the supermarket. That is also 10 centimeters dilated. So he'd give them a lovely bowl of fruit and he'd put the Dairy Lee triangle box on the top. Didn't go down well in some occasions. So as far as we're concerned, we have 3 stages and you have to be able to describe something about each of the 3 stages. So if you're really lucky, stage 1 lasts 12 hours. But the things that we are interested in here is the fact that you now have its contractions of your uterus is one of the things in the first stage. Your cervix will open or your cervix dilates. And again, that has to go to the 10 centimeters. And the contractions may cause the amniotic sac to break and the fluid released. So it may break. Now, usually your water's breaking is toward the end of stage 1. So if it happens first, you should really go to a hospital sooner rather than later. So there are stage 1. So it's only when you get to the 10 centimeter dilation mark is when stage 1 is over. Because then stage 2 is when you're actively pushing the baby out. And you're not allowed to push until you're 10 centimeters. Okay, so this now, I don't know how real it actually is or isn't. This is supposedly a baby born by cesarean and it's still within its amniotic sac, so it still has its fluid. I don't know how real it is or it isn't. So stage 2 is a max of 1 hour. So this is the part.
Looks like something from Alien or something.
But it is something from Alien.
Uh-huh.
It is what it is. Okay, so stage 1 will only last up to an hour. They won't let the female push for more than that. They'll then look at either sucking the child out with a vacuum or they will look at cesarean. So at this point is when the baby is being born. So the part that you want passes into your cervix and the birth canal head first, and it's now out. Your umbilical cord will be tied and cut and eventually becomes your belly button.
How do some people have innies and some people have outies?
I actually don't know, because what would we have said? I would have said from both my kids, I would have said my boy should have the innie and he doesn't, and the girl should have the outie, just from the way there it looked, and I don't know. So it just is the luck of the draw. There must be genetics in it.
I thought it'd be like a length thing, you know, like
No.
how.
No.
Really?
No, it I don't. It has to be a genetic component, because I like from the way they both looked as they were drying out. So the cord that's still attached kind of dries off, and eventually it'll fall off. And just the way they were, I would have put them for opposites. One that's innie should have been out, and the one that's out should have been in. So I think there's a genetic component to it too. Okay, so that's stage 2. And then in terms of stage 3, it's usually done at least 15 minutes. Your baby is born, but now you have to deliver the placenta and the umbilical cord. And not to freak any of the ladies in the audience out, but this part nobody shares with you, but that's actually, at least I found it much more painful than the actual birth. So there you go. And they have to make sure they get it all. So you've got your midwife squashing down your stomach to make sure that this all detaches, because they can't obviously leave it inside you.
What about if there's like a C-section? Then
so then they just remove it while they're in there.
Okay. So would it be like a picture earlier?
Kind of, yeah. Okay. Because what happens as soon as the baby is born and as soon as the cord is cut, the placenta literally starts to detach from the uterus, because it's not needed anymore now. Job is done. So they very much want it to all contract off and to have a clean break, because what you can find at this point is females start to hemorrhage and lose a lot of blood for some individuals. So I think that is it. We only have one small bit. So if we meet tomorrow at whatever time we have, 2:15, and we literally have, I'd say, 2 slides left. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Alrighty, so folks, enjoy your day. Go out into the cold air for yourselves. Okay, because
Thank you.
Thank you.